For centuries, we were told the same story, that the Amazon rainforest was a vast, untouched wilderness, an endless green ocean too hostile, too dense, too unforgiving for large human civilizations. That story is wrong. Long before Europeans arrived, the Amazon was not empty. It was not wild in the way we imagine. It was engineered. Beneath the trees, beneath the vines, beneath centuries of silence, there were cities. Not small villages, not scattered tribes barely surviving, but organized societies, with roads, with planned settlements, with agriculture sophisticated enough to reshape the forest itself. This is not speculation, this is evidence. But for a very long time, nobody wanted to see it. When the first Europeans traveled up the Amazon River in the 1500s, they described something extraordinary. The explorer Gaspar de Carvajal, traveling with Francisco de Orellana in 1542, wrote detailed accounts of enormous settlements. He described continuous settlements stretching for miles and cities lining the riverbanks with populations numbering in the thousands. Carvajal was not alone. Other conquistadors and explorers returned with similar stories. They spoke of organized agriculture, sophisticated water systems, and permanent settlements that rivaled European cities in scale. They described seeing smoke rising from countless villages, the sound of drums, and evidence of vast, organized societies. But here's where the story takes a turn. Later historians dismissed these accounts entirely. They assumed the explorers were exaggerating, hallucinating from tropical diseases, lying for glory and gold. After all, how could advanced societies exist in a place where the soil was supposedly useless, where floods, insects, and disease made permanent settlements supposedly impossible? The colonial scholars had made up their minds. The accounts were ignored, and a myth was born. The myth of the pristine, untouched Amazon, the virgin wilderness waiting to be discovered by Europe. For hundreds of years, that myth went unchallenged, because from the ground, everything looked wild. Trees everywhere, no stone ruins, no towering monuments like you'd find in Peru or Mexico, just forest, endless forest. But here's what those skeptics didn't understand. The Amazon does not preserve cities the way deserts do. It eats them. Wood rots in months, stone sinks into the earth, iron rusts, and the forest grows back faster than anything humans can build. Entire civilizations were swallowed, quietly, completely. Within generations, all evidence vanished. The turning point came not from the jungle floor, but from the sky. In the late 20th century, researchers began using aerial surveys and early satellite imagery across the Amazon, and they started seeing something that should not have existed according to the mainstream historical narrative. Perfect geometric shapes, circles, squares, straight lines stretching for kilometers through the forest, not random, not accidental, clearly designed. These were geoglyphs, massive earthworks carved into the landscape, visible only from above. By the early 2000s, scientists had documented thousands of them, hidden beneath trees, connected by ancient roads, surrounded by evidence of dense human occupation. Some geoglyphs covered areas larger than modern city blocks. Others formed patterns so precise they could only have been laid out with sophisticated surveying knowledge. The discoveries kept coming. In Peru, researchers found geoglyphs near the Ucayali River depicting geometric patterns spanning hundreds of meters. In Bolivia, similar earthworks suggested planned urban centers. The scale was staggering. But the real revolution came with one technology: LIDAR. LIDAR stands for light detection and ranging. It's essentially laser imaging that can see through the forest canopy. Researchers mount LIDAR equipment on aircraft or helicopters, and the lasers penetrate the dense vegetation, bouncing off the ground below. When you process that data, the trees disappear digitally, and what's underneath becomes visible. The results were astonishing. When the trees disappeared from those LIDAR images, the Amazon changed forever. What emerged were entire urban networks, not scattered settlements, not primitive villages, but planned cities with organized street layouts, causeways connecting population centers across swamps and rivers, defensive earthworks designed for protection, water management systems including canals, reservoirs, and controlled drainage. This was not accidental habitation. This was civilization, sophisticated civilization. As evidence accumulated, archaeologists began revising population estimates for pre-Columbian Amazonia. Early estimates suggested maybe a few 100,000 people. Then those numbers rose to over 1 million, then multiple millions. Today, leading scholars estimate that before European contact, somewhere between 5 to 10 million people, some estimates go even higher, lived in the Amazon basin. Let that sink in. 10 million people. In the 1500s, that would have made the Amazon basin more densely populated than many parts of Europe. To put this in perspective, the entire population of England in 1500 was roughly 2.5 million. The Amazon alone potentially had 4 times that number, spread across an area of 5.5 square kilometers. These societies were not primitive. They were not fighting against the jungle for survival. They were shaping it, engineering it, managing it according to their needs. One of the most significant discoveries reveals just how advanced this management was. It has to do with the soil itself. Amazonian soil is naturally poor, acidic. Nutrients wash away quickly in heavy rains. The soil lacks the minerals needed for sustained agriculture. Even today, modern farmers struggle to grow crops here. It's one of the reasons the Amazon remained relatively undeveloped compared to other regions. And yet the ancient Amazonians created some of the most fertile, productive soil on the planet. They called it Terra Preta, black earth. Terra Preta is a manufactured soil created through an ingenious process. Archaeologists believe ancient peoples combined charcoal fragments from controlled burning with organic waste, bones, shell, and other biological materials. They added this mixture to the existing poor soil in specific patterns. The result? A soil that holds nutrients for centuries, a soil that regenerates itself naturally, a soil that is still fertile today, more than 500 years after it was created, without any modern fertilizer input. Modern soil scientists have studied Terra Preta extensively. They cannot easily replicate it on a large scale. We have machines, we have chemistry, we have controlled laboratory conditions, and still we struggle to match what these people created without any of those tools. These ancient Amazonians solved an agricultural problem that modern science still finds challenging, without machines, without metal tools, without even a written language to record their methods. They did not clear the forest completely. That would have been destructive and inefficient. Instead, they domesticated it. Many of the trees we think of as wild Amazonian species were not wild at all. They were selectively planted and managed by ancient peoples. Consider the Brazil nut tree, considered quintessentially wild, part of pristine nature. Yet archaeological evidence shows it was cultivated and encouraged by pre-Columbian societies. The same applies to cacao trees, fruit trees, and medicinal plants. The forest itself became a living infrastructure, a managed system. The ancient Amazonians created sophisticated agroforestry systems. They understood ecological succession. They understood which plants provided food, medicine, materials, and which ones enriched soil. Over centuries, they shaped the forest to meet their needs while maintaining biodiversity and ecological balance. Roads connected these settlements, not simple dirt paths, but engineered causeways that remained elevated during seasonal flooding. Some roads stretched for kilometers, indicating long-distance trade and communication networks. Settlements were built with clear purpose and planning. Buildings were aligned, streets followed geometric patterns. Defensive earthworks, raised mounds, and ditches suggest consideration of warfare and security. Water systems, including canals, managed both drainage during floods and water storage during dry seasons.
Archaeological surveys near the Rio Negro and throughout the upper Amazon have uncovered hundreds of these settlements. Some covered areas of 5 square kilometers or more. Around major cities, satellite data and ground surveys reveal agricultural fields, storage facilities, and evidence of specialized labor. This was not primitive living. This was long-term planning on a civilizational scale. These societies had developed sophisticated agriculture adapted to tropical conditions, urban planning and architecture, trade networks spanning hundreds of kilometers, water management technology, population densities supporting millions of people, sustainable resource management that maintained forest health. They achieved what many modern societies struggle with, living sustainably within an environment without depleting it.
And then, very suddenly, it all collapsed. Not because the jungle defeated them, not because their systems failed, not because their cities could not sustain the populations they held, but because of something invisible, something they had no immunity to, something that came across the ocean. When Europeans arrived in the early 1500s, they brought diseases: smallpox, measles, influenza, typhus, mumps, whooping cough. These were old world viruses that had evolved alongside European, African, and Asian populations for thousands of years. Indigenous Americans had never encountered them. Their immune systems had no defenses, no antibodies, no genetic resistance. The epidemics that followed were catastrophic beyond imagination. Within decades, sometimes within just a few years, entire regions were emptied. Some estimates suggest population losses of up to 90% in affected areas. In some cases, entire cities died faster than could be imagined. An epidemic would arrive, communities would be decimated, the surviving population would flee or die, fields would be abandoned, roads would fall silent, cities would empty. And the forests returned, remarkably fast. What took humans centuries to build, nature reclaimed in generations. The Terra Preta remained fertile, but there was no one to farm it. The roads remained, but there was no one to travel them. The cities remained, but they were empty, quiet. By the time later explorers and surveyors arrived in subsequent centuries, there was nothing left to see from the ground, only trees. The jungle had reclaimed everything. The myth of the untouched Amazon was not created by ignorance alone. It was created by erasure. A civilization died so quickly and so completely that it left almost no memory in the consciousness of the European world. The indigenous survivors were often slaves, refugees, or small remnant populations. And so history was rewritten. The explorers' accounts of great cities were dismissed as fantasy. The myths of pristine wilderness replaced the reality of managed landscape. European scholars decided their narrative made more sense than the eyewitness accounts of conquistadors. But now, the forest is giving up its secrets. Every year, new sites are discovered. New networks are mapped using LIDAR and satellite data. New archaeological evidence is uncovered. In 2021 alone, researchers announced discoveries of dozens of previously unknown pre-Columbian settlements across the Amazon basin. The LIDAR surveys continue to reveal more. In 2022, scientists working in Rondônia, Brazil, identified geometric earthworks spanning thousands of hectares. In Peru, researchers have mapped hundreds of previously unknown archaeological sites. The work is ongoing, and new discoveries are announced regularly. The Amazon is no longer just a rainforest. It is a graveyard of cities, a burial ground of civilizations, a monument to lost knowledge. And this changes more than just history. It fundamentally changes how we think about several critical issues. First, sustainability. These ancient societies managed a complex environment sustainably for centuries. They did not destroy their ecosystem. They engineered balance. They created agricultural systems that actually improved soil quality.
They managed forests for productivity while maintaining biodiversity. Today, we clear-cut, we monoculture, we deplete soil, we use chemical fertilizers that leach into waterways, we create dead zones. We call this progress. The Amazon civilizations achieved what we have not: sustainable abundance. They fed millions of people without degrading their environment. In fact, they improved it. Second, agriculture and food security. Terra Preta technology could revolutionize how we approach soil restoration and agricultural sustainability. Scientists are actively researching how to apply ancient Terra Preta principles to modern agriculture. If we could replicate this technology at scale, we could restore degraded soils across the globe. We could potentially feed more people with fewer chemical inputs. The agroforestry systems of ancient Amazonia, mixing fruit trees, nitrogen-fixing trees, and other species, offer models for sustainable food production that modern agriculture is only beginning to rediscover. Third, human impact on nature. We have been taught that humans naturally destroy their environments, that civilization and nature are in opposition. The Amazon civilizations contradict this. They were civilizations, they had cities, they had millions of people, and they maintained ecological health. This suggests that human impact is not inherently destructive. The question is not whether we affect nature, but how we affect it. Do we destroy or do we regenerate? Fourth, climate and carbon. Terra Preta is essentially biochar, carbon-rich soil. It sequesters carbon for centuries. In a time of climate collapse, understanding how to create and maintain biochar-rich soils could be significant for carbon sequestration strategies. Moreover, the knowledge of sustainable forest management held by these civilizations, knowledge partially understood by modern indigenous peoples, could inform how we approach reforestation and climate adaptation. Fifth, what we lost. Perhaps most importantly, this history reminds us of what we lost when these civilizations collapsed. We lost technological knowledge. We lost agricultural techniques. We lost environmental management systems refined over centuries. The knowledge buried beneath the Amazon, knowledge that might have addressed our most pressing modern challenges, was erased not by failure, but by plague, by accident, by the invisible hand of disease. And because it was forgotten, we had to reinvent the wheel. We had to figure out agriculture, city planning, and environmental management from scratch, without the benefit of millennia of accumulated Amazon wisdom.
Today, the forest we see is not untouched. It is inherited. It is a landscape shaped by millions of people over thousands of years. The trees we think are wild were often planted. The soil we think is natural was often engineered. Indigenous peoples continue to live in the Amazon today. They are the descendants of these ancient civilizations. They carry knowledge accumulated over millennia, and they understand the forest in ways modern science is only beginning to comprehend. Yet, the Amazon faces unprecedented threats. Deforestation is accelerating, industrial agriculture is expanding, cattle ranching is destroying habitat, mining operations are poisoning waterways. And beneath the trees that remain, the cities are still there, waiting, not yet fully explored, not yet fully understood. Thousands of archaeological sites remain to be investigated. Thousands more likely remain undiscovered. Every site lost to deforestation is a library burned. Every forest cleared is a museum demolished. Every ancient settlement destroyed is knowledge erased again. The opportunity to study these civilizations, to understand their technologies, to learn from their mistakes and successes, this opportunity has a deadline. As the forest shrinks, as sites are destroyed, this chance grows shorter. The forest we see today is not empty. It is full of ghosts, full of memory, full of lessons we desperately need to learn. Beneath it, the cities are still there, waiting to be remembered, waiting to teach us how to build civilizations that don't destroy the world. The question is, will we listen before it's too late?